I catch you with these arms that hold me back against this wall. Release me from these chains that hold me fast. You see, there's a light at the end that I'm running to. If you hold my hand, then I'll show you there's a lot more waiting for us all at the end of the road.
Last week, for those of you that were here, we had a collection of women and men and children, and they were standing at the edge of the wild with Moses. They were leaders and they were strangers. They were woodcutters and water drawers. And they were standing together before Moses and God, poised to enter the promised land, hoping beyond hope to find God in the wild. And at that moment, they had a choice to make, affirming their covenant with God and following the way of God in the world, even if that meant going into the wild, not knowing what that meant and where they would find God. And together we shared where we're seeing God, the radical hope of God outside the walls of the church. And then Wednesday came. You remember Wednesday, right? Think back in the recesses of your mind to Wednesday. It wasn't that long ago. I mean, I know we're still reeling from the horned frog loss. It was hot on Wednesday, if you remember. I think the heat index that day was 116, if I recall. I mean, it was really hot. But on Wednesday, it was so much more. As I picture the children of Israel gathered before Moses, that image for me is overlaid with another timely scene of a mass gathering and powerful words of admonition and blessing and promise. For Wednesday was the 50th anniversary of the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom, and that historic speech by Martin Luther King Jr., that great dream speech in which he shared a way for community to be different. And it was a wild hope for humanity that day. And it was a sticky day. It was a sweltering August day in Washington 50 years ago. A small team of civil rights leaders and labor leaders, countless organizers and strangers together on that day. The 20th century equivalents in my mind of woodcutters and water drawers, children and women and men, standing together on the threshold of history, not unlike that moment with Moses, the edge of the wild. And though many spoke beautifully or lifted their voices in song on that day, it was King who turned the march into another covenantal moment to choose, to walk with people, the people of God. Now, Kanye West is no Martin Luther King Jr. Let's be perfectly clear. Let us not be confused that Kanye West is not Moses either. But oh, his words. The video that you saw at the beginning of worship tonight was not Kanye West, but those were his words. From his song that has won quite a few awards and ignored by the music industry. It's his song called Jesus Walks. And in this rap song, he reminds us how Jesus chooses to be with all manner of people, from the sinner to the saint, the wild people of God. That is the way of those who follow in the footsteps of the man named Jesus. His song outlines the war that happens within ourselves with racism, with society, with those who follow Jesus, with those who walk with Jesus. Now, in total, there are 3 separate music videos for this. And I wish that Kanye had chosen some different words at the beginning of the song so that I could have shown you at least one of them. But there's not a clean version of the song out there with the video, to be honest. So I encourage you, I didn't know what kind of children might be in our midst, and I look out there and shoot, I could have shown the video. But there are 3 versions of this video because he was so passionate about the story, he felt like only one version wasn't going to capture it. So let me describe them for you. One version was financed by the record company. The second and the third were financed personally by himself. All 3 premiered on the same day, where West explained that the song evoked so much emotion for him that 4 minutes, literally this is what he said, 4 minutes of imagery limit the idea, so he had to do 3. In one video that you'll find, you can find them all on YouTube, in one video, West is portrayed as a preacher, rapping, which, I mean, that's what we would assume, right? A preacher rapping before a congregation from a pulpit while angels dance and guide a prostitute, an alcoholic, and a drug dealer to the church. The second version of the video takes place in the Deep South. It's the one that's won for Video of the Year. It has a very complex storyline. It takes various deplorable characters that we might see in society, and it merges them with kind of biblical iconography, biblical imagery that those of us in the church immediately sense and see in these people in order to convey the message that God is with these deplorable people. The video stands, I think, as the most metaphorical of the 3 for sure. And it features West rapping in a hallway, which is filled alternately with hellish flames and angelic light, in conjunction with drug traffickers being pursued through a barren desert by police, prison camp inmates battling with guards, and a Ku Klux Klansman setting himself on fire while carrying a burning cross up a mountain. The final version of Jesus Walks was filmed in West's hometown of Chicago, and it was filmed in one day, kind of guerrilla style, if you understand kind of the imagery of that. And it depicts Jesus in the modern day. I love this one. And literally, the Jesus figure is walking from his home to church, performing miracles with people that he finds on the streets of Chicago. All 3 are extremely powerful. You know, we throw that word way around a lot when we talk about Jesus. Way. It's like our scripture tonight. It's one of the few scriptures that maybe some of us could say off the top of our heads. We say that we're the people of the book, but we're like, I know the one that says Jesus wept, right? I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father through me. God said it was good, right? I mean, there's like 4 that we say that we know and know them well. They're the really short ones, right? Way. Probably, I think it's interesting because Jesus throws this phrase at us. I am the way, the truth, and the life. The thing is, in our world, in the Christian subculture, way gets thrown by the wayside, literally. People jump on truth and life. They want to get to the truth. They want to get to the life. They don't want to talk about the way, but way is first. Way is the first thing that Jesus talks about. This man from Nazareth, this Jewish man who has all of his Jewish history to him, says the first thing that's important before you get to truth, before you get to life everlasting, is way. Truth gets a lot more attention in our culture, doesn't it? Lots of churches want to beat it into us. But we can't skip it. We can't skip the way. Way is about covenant keeping. The way of Jesus is the way that we practice. And that practice becomes our truth. And in that truth becomes our life. In the earliest days of the church, what later came to be called Christianity was literally called the way. It wasn't called Christianity. It was simply called the way. When people were encountering one another, they would say, do you follow the way? And they knew immediately that meant they were following the teachings of the man called Jesus. It was simply called the way. Jesus called himself the way to God. A way is not necessarily a set of doctrines to memorize, a set of propositions that we assent to. We forget that. In our hurry to make everyone think like we do, it is not anything like that at all. It is a path. It is a roadmap, if you will. And it's a lifelong journey to God. And at the same time with God. Jesus is the way to God in as much as he shows us the way to God through his words and his deeds. And I wonder how we're doing. Got to tell you, I'm not doing so good. I don't know about you. When Thomas asks Jesus, I got to get there. I got to be first. How do I make it all work, Jesus? Thomas asks, the way you are going, Jesus simply says, I am the way, the truth, and the life. Only by observing this man, Jesus, particularly by observing the way in which he lived his life, can we discover what it means to be in the way. I find it fascinating that Taoism is a religion whose name is based on a root that means the way. And in its book, the Tao Te Ching, it contains numerous sayings that discuss the meaning of the way. And a lot of them have a lot to teach Christianity. Now, I don't want to make you nervous. I know I've just come back from sabbatical. You guys think I'm crazier than I was before I left. And I get that. But the following quotations I want you to hear. I'm going to give you the Taoist quotation, and then I'm going to tell you what I think it has to teach Christianity. Listen close, okay? The way alone is good at beginning and good at completing. I would say that the way, the path that leads to God, exemplified for us in Jesus, is a journey that is meant for all, young and old, rich and poor, male and female. And only then, by following this path, can we find happiness at any stage in our life. Right? How about this one? When the superior man hears the way, he is secretly able to put it into practice. When the middling man hears the way, he appears now to preserve it, now to lose it. And when the inferior man hears the way, he laughs at it loudly. If he did not laugh, he would not be fit to be the way. That gets a little confusing. But I find that those who claim the way most loudly, to understand the way of God, you know who they are often those whose actions betray the most abysmal misconceptions of the way of Jesus. The way that leads to God, in my mind, is not characterized by prejudice and hatred and arrogance, but by respect and love and humility. And that's what gets me in trouble. For Christians, Jesus' contention that he is the way lays paramount claim to the manner in which we live our lives. And that surpasses any other loyalty that we have. And that's so hard. It's so hard. That means our country, Texas. That means our state, Texas. That means where we live, Texas. That means our race, that means our culture, that means our class, that means our religious tradition, that means the cowboys. I mean, it's crazy. And I was taught so much about the way this summer at the Wild Goose Festival by a man named Nathan. Nathan is Jewish. Nathan is in his late 20s. And it was so interesting. He literally had just come off the Appalachian Trail. He quit his job. He realized he wasn't fit for management and said, I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm going to go hike the Appalachian Trail. So he gets off the Appalachian Trail. He literally comes out near where there's this huge sign that says the Wild Goose Festival. He's like, what's the Wild Goose Festival? I don't know. I'm going to go check it out. All dirty from being on the trail, gross, smelly, whatever. Walks up to the tent and says, what's the Wild Goose Festival? And they said, well, funny that you ask. It's a festival about art, spirituality, and justice. He goes, that sounds really neat. Is there a volunteer opportunity here for me? And they said, yes, there is. He said, that's great. I just got off the trail. All I have is my camping gear. My sister's going to pick me up in 4 days. Can I volunteer? They said, sure. He said, does it matter that I'm Jewish? They said, no. We didn't say it was a Christian festival. We said it's art, spirituality, and justice. They said, now you're going to hear some Christian stuff, for sure. But there's some Hindus here, there's some Muslims, there's agnostics, there's even atheists here. But yeah, we would love to have you. Signs up to volunteer, not knowing what he's getting himself into. Now, there's no place for him to stay, no camping, anything. So lo and behold, he's camping literally across the road from the cottage where I stay because I don't camp. Now, I thought we had it all together, and so we're outside on our little porch overlooking the Appalachian Trail and the mountains, thinking we are awesome on our sacred porch, having a wonderful time with our candles when we realized we don't have any matches. And we're looking everywhere. We don't smoke, so we don't have any matches inside the cottage. We don't have anything to light. We're like rubbing sticks together. Sorry, Daddy, I couldn't make a flame to save my life. When here comes Nathan. And I believe Heather said, hey, I wonder if that guy has a light. I said, I don't know. And Andrew goes, I don't know. So I said, hey. And Heather goes, hey, do you have a light? And he's like, yeah. And I'm probably going to get myself in trouble. I'm like, if you have a light, we have bourbon and beer. And he goes, I'll be right over. So he literally brings a lighter. And I'm like, hey, yeah, we're silly girls and we didn't bring a light and we have candles and our place didn't have air conditioning. And so we said, it's the coolest place is right here. Would you like a beer or some bourbon and if we could have a light? And he's like, sure. Sits down, starts telling us his story. And come to find out, in the middle of all of this, he said, you know, I learned a whole lot from my Jewish tradition about keeping covenant. And I said, really? Are you practicing? And he said, no. Oh, but you're volunteering. Yes. Why? Because it's important. For you? Yes. Okay. You don't know what this is. You don't know who I am. I don't know who you are. You're sitting on my porch. I mean, you could be an axe murderer. This is all very strange to me whatsoever. Like, I can just hear my dad in the background going, what are you doing? What are you doing? Now he knows where you live. He's going to, And every morning, he would get up and come early and make, tea for us because, we didn't have a lock on our door or anything. And we'd wake up, and there was tea made for us. And he literally, they wouldn't have known if he showed up for his volunteer opportunity, and he did. Every day, went to his volunteer. And at the end of the Wild Goose Festival, I said to him, Nathan, what did you learn? And he said, well, I learned that I didn't realize there were Christians like you out there. I said, what do you mean by that? He said, well, I thought all Christians were kind of like Pat, what's his name? I go, do we really have to talk about him? He's like, well, I live in North Carolina, and it's pretty conservative, and I didn't know that people would even want to talk to me. I was afraid to tell you I was Jewish. When I found out you were a minister, I thought you were going to try to convert me. He said, not once did you ever talk about Jesus. I said, oh, I didn't. He said, not once. I was like, oh gosh, I'm such a bad minister. What was I thinking? And he goes, but what I did is I learned a whole lot about who you are as a Christian. And I said, well, I got to tell you, Nathan, I learned a lot about how to keep covenant. And I said, I realize I don't do a really good job of keeping promises. And so he's watching tonight online because I told him I was going to tell a story. And I wonder if we have a lot of work to do if we consider ourselves as following the way. We're looking at a song tonight that talks about walking with Jesus and where Jesus walks and who Jesus walks with. Tagging is when you sign your name with spray paint or a representation, a symbol of yourself for the whole community to see. Anywhere public, you create tags with spray paint. You've seen them. Maybe you've been a part of a group that's scrubbing it off of something and probably cursing under your breath at whoever did it. Well, tonight you get to tag, not with spray paint. My mom said that was a bad idea, and she was going to be here, so you get to tag with finger paint. Tonight, I really want to encourage you. We have 4 tagging stations set up with finger paint, and I want you to think about a symbol, a word, something, an image that means something about how you walk with Jesus. What is your covenant going to be? Out in the world, if you could put it out there anywhere about what your promise is, what your covenant is, what you want to be in the way, what would it look like? What would it see? What is it? You have that opportunity to do that now. Go and walk with Jesus.
See, I catch you with these arms that hold me back against this wall. Release me from these chains that hold me fast. You see, there's a light at the end that I'm running to. If you hold my hand, then I'll show you there's a lot more waiting for us all at the end of the road.